Hello, and welcome back to Hillsboro Public Library's Book Bites Middle School Morsels. I'm Laura Mikowski, and we're taking a dive into 3 stories that feature coming-of-age characters, fictional and real, who may reflect and connect with you over some of what you know, some of what you do, some of who you are, but perhaps not something you've been able to name before. Coming of age is defined as a young person's transition from being a child to being an adult. Our characters are definitely on that cusp, with all the confusion and questions you might find you're also asking about and looking for as you make that transition from one lane of life to another, from childhood into adulthood. You don't get to choose when you come of age. It can be quick or a long culmination of circumstances and experiences that then firmly plant you on that path. It may creep up on you in little ways or in big, unnameable ways, and these 3 stories do just that. What Lane by Tori Maldonado introduces Stephen, whose growing awareness as a biracial teen begins to put him at odds with his school friends and the neighborhood he's grown up in. Letters from Cuba by Ruth Behar looks at immigration outside of the U.S. during a period when Nazis are on the rise and immigration from Eastern Europe meant life or death. Jewish Esther comes of age in a country far away and extremely different from her native Poland. And finally, My Family Divided is Diane Guerrero's memoir of growing up with the threat of undocumented parents and how their status defined and changed her entire life trajectory. Have you heard the phrase, stay in your lane? Biracial Stephen doesn't want to believe there are lanes that he needs to adhere to when it comes to being with his friends and doing what they do. But he's growing up, and when strangers start treating him differently from his white friends, he notices, and that's going to push him into a lane he never even knew existed, but one he's preparing to step onto. This compact 125-page book packs a wallop of information, explanation, and answers as Stephen's voice and actions propel him to question and explore his own lanes, those he's created and those he's grouped into because of his blackness. What lane will you be in? I'm guessing after you join Stephen, you'll find navigating social justice and anti-racism will become a lane to travel on and with. Do you have an immigration story in your family? Most of us do. But what happens when immigration moves beyond the borders of the U.S.? From the increasingly anti-Semitic world of Poland in 1937, Esther finds herself in Cuba, following in her father's footsteps, aiming to establish roots there, and like Stephen, with a variety of lanes to travel within. The story is told through letters. Esther writes to her younger sister Melka to subdue her homesickness and aching loss of her immediate family's absence. Letter writing allows the reader to be Melka, and Esther's correspondence gives us entry to Cuba itself. Earning money to buy passage for their remaining family is top priority. The genius way in which she goes about it makes for a fascinating look into this world at this time and all of its dire complications. I always recommend historical fiction. It is one of our only means of time travel, and becoming part of this story will surely get you wondering about immigration, near and far, past and present. Which then leads me to the present and final book choice, My Family Divided by Diane Guerrero. This edition is a young reader's version of her adult memoir, In the Country We Love, which is Hillsboro Public Library's Hillsboro Reads Choice for 2021. Diane is a child of undocumented parents, and it's that fact which then defines and shapes her story and her entire life. All of the highs of a solid and loving childhood, and the lows that occur when everything she knows is suddenly gone, leaving her without a guide beyond herself at the age of 14. What lanes did Diane travel to become the acclaimed actor and activist she is today? It's an incredible and timely story as immigration policy continues to be shaped and Diane continues to fight on its behalf. I have to include a trigger warning for this title, so please note that Diane's coming-of-age memoir is both joyous and traumatic. Some of that trauma includes scenes of self-harm. If you connect with any of our featured titles, you are sure to enjoy the following: The Stars Beneath Our Feet by David Barclay Moore, 12-year-old Lolly is struggling to put the pieces of his life back together after the death of his older brother in a gang-related shooting in Harlem. His mother gives him a bag of Legos for Christmas, which leads to creative ways to set Lolly back on track. Then there's Brother's Keeper by Julie Lee. Family is everything, and like Esther, Sora decides to get her and her brother to safety in South Korea during wartime, which is a 300-mile trip. And finally, Harbor Me by Jacqueline Woodson. If only Diane had Art, a room to talk, at school when her parents were deported. A room to talk brings 6 struggling students together in a safe place to express their fears as their lives implode at the loss of their parents because of a variety of factors, including deportation. Thanks so much for joining me for this edition of Book Bites Middle School Morsels, Choosing Lanes While Coming of Age. Be sure to look for the Bibliocommons list that accompanies these selections for additional like titles. And do follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at the hashtags listed below. As a side note, because spring is like tax season for collection development librarians, I'll be taking a short break and hope to return with titles you can connect with and gobble up come summer. Until then, please reach out if you have any questions or need recommendations with our Find Your Next service, and do keep on reading. I'm certainly going to.